Alrighty, so before I do the review of the remaining 4th of July games and also the lone Wednesday game between NYCFC versus Charlotte FC, I want to do a news of the week episode first because there was a lot of signings that happened after the 4th of July, including a couple of blockbuster signing that also happened as the secondary transfer window is about to open. In fact, I think it's actually now open and it's going to run all the way to August. But the first blockbuster signing happened yesterday where Montreal has acquired Mahala Opoku in exchange for up to $1.75 million general allocation money to LAFC. Now, this is definitely a dropping kind of signing with the way that, $1.75 million general money is a lot of money. And I'm not saying Mahala Opoku isn't a good player. I think he has a lot upside, although this year, he's I feel like he's still a raw product where he can still be much better than the quality he has shown during his time with LAFC, especially this season. But for $1.75 million, that is a lot of money to pay. Now, obviously, Montreal is no strangers in terms of trying to sign other players, promising player, eventually sell them off to Europe. And I thought for sure that LAFC was going to do it with Maha Opoku, which I think that's makes this signing even more surprising. The fact that they elected to kind of trade him to another club, and it's also interesting to see whether or not if there's actually going to be some sell on fees. I mean, in this deal, I haven't heard anything about potential sell on fees, and I think that's huge for LAFC because if Mahala Opoku is going to do well with Montreal and eventually they sell him off to Europe, then LAFC will at least get some part of that sell on fee. But either way, this is definitely a big signing, and that we'll see how he's gonna do with Montreal. Montreal has definitely played much better in these last couple of weeks, and Montreal has also been no strangers in terms of making blockbuster signings. I mean, earlier this season they just got Bryce Duke and Ariel Lassiter off of a trade, and then they trade away probably their best defender, Kamal Miller, to Miami. So yeah, I mean, this is a team that they're not afraid to make those big signings, and they're also not afraid in terms of developing young promising player MLS and selling them to clubs in Europe. I mean, a clear example of that is Georgi Mihailovic when they decided to sign him for $1 million with Chicago, and it feels like ever since that's what kind of Montreal has been doing, signing other young players from other clubs that you would think that they were going to be sold off to Europe with that club, but instead they go to Montreal and they get the money out of that. Now, the Colorado Rapids have also acquired Andrew Goodman in exchange for up to 550,000 general allocation money and an international spot. So this was another blockbuster move and kind of a surprising one too, because I didn't think Atlanta was going to let go of Andrew Goodman, and especially with him going to Colorado, that's kind of a weird destination for him to go. But I guess the Rapids are desperate in terms of attacking threat. And Andrew Gritman, I really think these last couple of years, it feels like we have seen an evolution of how he's been playing. Where a couple years ago when he was still with the Red Bulls, he was more of a fullback, and then with Atlanta United in these last couple of years, he's been more used as a wingback and kind of are more pushed up forward to a point where he's pretty much just kind of like a winger right now. I mean, he hasn't really been the best in terms of defending. He's more contributing on the attacking end in terms of scoring goals that we don't kind of see Andrew Goodman did when he come with the New York Red Bulls. So again, I think that's what the Rapids are hoping. They sign a guy that has some attacking threat. And again, this Rapids team, they will take any attacking threats that they have. This is a team that have repeatedly struggled to score goals and offer no attacking threat whatsoever this season. And also for 550,000 general allocation money and an international spot, I think it's a good deal. I think that's right about the amount that I would say. Maybe a little little bit cheaper than I thought would be. Probably I thought it would be something up to like 750,000 or even up to like that $1 million range. But overall, I think this is a good deal for the Rapids and getting a guy that again I think he is going to be a guy that I won't be surprised eventually he's going to just play out in the wing area because with the way that this season with Atlanta he's more of a threat going for on the attack than on the defensive front. Maybe that's what the Rapids are going to use him as. Speaking of wingers, Minnesota United have signed former NYCFC and LAFC winger Ishmael Tajuri-Shradi. Now, I think this is a good signing for the Loons, considering that this does add some more depth in terms of the wing area. And, if Ishmael Tajuri-Shradi can stay healthy, and that's a big if, because he's been one of the most injury-riddled players in the leagues last couple of seasons. He's a dynamic player, and I also wonder, with Franco Fragapani contract ends this season, and that if the Loons decide not to renew his contract, which again, that's still kind of up to debate because I think Fragapani hasn't had a good season so far for this team, and that it feels like maybe they are going to be thinking about moving on from him this off season. Maybe Ishmael Tajouri could be a good replacement, but again, the key word in terms of him being good is the fact that if he can stay on the pitch, because of the fact that he hasn't been able to do so has really hampered his career. But nevertheless, for depth signing, I think this is a decent depth signing for this Minnesota team. Now, Sporting KC decided to re-sign Felipe Gutierrez because this is probably the most Peter Vermes signing, where Peter Vermes is literally trying to assemble all of his former Sporting KC player from a couple of years ago. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Sporting KC might even be linked with Jimmy Madron or even Lawrence Olam as what I hear some Sporting KC fans are saying that they bring, because you look at this team and some of the recent Peter Vermes signings, it's all some of his old players that used to be good, but they have really kind of been irrelevant for the last couple of years, and that's kind of the case for Felipe Gutierrez. I mean, as I said, when Colorado decided to get him, this would be a great signing if this was maybe 2017 and 18, but in the year of 2023, Felipe Gutierrez is definitely not the guy that you would think that could still get regular minutes or even be with an MLS team. But I guess maybe Sporting KC decided to offer for him another chance. And again, I don't expect him to be a regular starter. I mean, that Sporting KC midfield is actually pretty stacked. I mean, that's kind of the one area that they are actually have a lot of depth, and I guess maybe this just kind of provides some veteran prisoners, so forth. But other than that, it's again, it's a very Peter Vermes kind of signing of bring the old band back, bring the guys that made the Sporting KC team so good for during the mid 2000 and even near the mid 2010s and all the way near the end of the 2010s. Now, Atlanta United have signed midfielder Tristan Mayumba from EA Gungam in League 2. Now, this is an interesting one because, again, I don't know a lot about this guy other than the fact that Atlanta, so far in terms of these last couple of signings that they had, and really for some of these signings that they have in the last couple of years, it has been a huge miss. And I don't know a whole lot about this guy, and I'm pretty sure Atlanta fans are probably going to be a little bit pessimistic about this signing. I mean, he could turn out to be well, but then you look at some of the signings that Atlanta has kind of whiffed in the last couple of years. Again, it'll be interesting to see how he's going to fit and whether or not he's going to be a regular starter. Now, the Philadelphia Union, they have loaned defender Brendan Craig to Austin FC. Now, obviously, I think this is a good move, especially for Brendan Craig with the way that, he wasn't getting any minutes with this Union team, that I feel like it was the best for him to go to Austin, a team that, this season they have been just snake bitten in terms of that center back spot, where most of their center backs has been either injured at time or suffering long-term injury, and with the way that Austin desperately need defenders, this would make sense, and I think Brandon Craig is definitely going to get more playing time with Los Verdes compared to during his time with the Union. Now, the New England Revolution have signed midfielder Ian Harkes. Now, Ian Harkes has been a guy that's been spending time with Dundee United for the past couple of years, ever since he made his move to Europe, and his career has kind of stagnated during his time with Dundee, so he decided to come back to MLS. I would think that DC was probably the team that was going to give him a chance, but I guess maybe the Revs would give him a chance as well. Though again, I think he's mostly used as a depth piece and maybe a utility player rather than just being a guy that could be on the fringe of being a starter for this Revs team, because they're pretty good in terms of depth in that midfield too. Now, moving on in terms of next news, and now talk about some of the transfer rumors, but because boy, we did had some interesting transfer rumors, and it all started with this happened a couple of hours ago, where there's a report saying that NYCFC is actually offering Neymar a deal to come to MLS. Now, if Neymar does come to MLS, maybe in these next year or two or so, I mean, can you imagine you have the likes of Messi coming into the league, and now you're getting Neymar? I mean, that just shows you that MLS, they're not they're they're definitely not lying down in terms of once again signing these big name kind of player. And again, before some Euro snub will say, well, looks like MLS is back to the age of a retirement league. No, because when you look at how MLS is in the year of 2020 and also in this MLS 3.0 and soon to be MLS 4.0 era, we still are seeing teams in terms of signing young players so that they can of course sell them off for big amount of money. But we definitely do still see some teams that decide to go with the MLS 2.0 era, and especially with NYCFC knowing the fact that they haven't really have a big name player on this team. I mean, when you look at this NYCFC team, there's always tends to be a big name player with this team ever since they came into the league. You know, we saw with David Villa, then we saw with Tati Castellanos, but this season it's just kind of missing that. So getting Neymar is definitely gonna get the attention back in the New York area, and that yeah, I mean, imagine if Neymar does come to MLS. I mean, there could be a chance that he could. I mean, I don't think it's gonna be soon because I think that he's good. I think his contract is still got about a year or two left with PSG. But this is definitely one that NYCFC is looking to be ambitious and trying to get a big name so that once again they get butts in that this season. Once again, also get attention of another big name player that is part of this team. Now, speaking of NYCFC, there's a report suggesting that their new stadium at Willets Point actually could be ready ahead of schedule. It could be ready before the 2026 World Cup. Now, obviously, that stadium is not going to host any World Cup games. I mean, MetLife Stadium, of course, is the designated venue to host these World Cup game in the New York area. But this is kind of interesting because if it's going to be ready before the 2026 World Cup, let's say if it's going to be ready before like June, I wonder would NYCFC ready to maybe open their new stadium as soon as the 2026 season? Because as of now, it seems like they'll be ready for the 2027 season. But if it's going to be ready before the World Cup, they could do something that we've seen teams done before, where they go on a lengthy road trip to begin with, or maybe knowing that they can also still play at Yankee Stadium or play at Citi Field for a bit before playing their remaining games at their new stadium. They could also do that too. So yeah, this is gonna be interesting to see that if it's gonna be ready before the 2026 World Cup, if it's gonna be ready around the June and July period. I'll be surprised if NYCFC could start playing a home game at their new stadium as soon as the 2026 season. Now, Atlanta United, they have decided to loan out Franco Ibarra, and this is another example of the latest fail kind of Atlanta United young kind of South American player that they hope that they can develop in MLS and sell them off with a profit. And to be fair, there's been a lot of that lately. I mean, as I said with Atlanta and their philosophy, I like the philosophy that they of course did, and really they were kind of almost like the pioneer of that because every team has basically copied that formula to some extent. But really, Atlanta has stagnated in the last couple of years too. Like the only guys that they have really developed to be really promising, Miguel Almiron, a great example, and then recently with Thiago Almada getting some really big interest off to Europe. But Franco Ibarra is definitely not one of those, and he, along with guys like Eric Lopez and even Santiago Sosa, has just been guys that just kind of left in the dust and never really were able to develop to make potentially sell off for a big amount of money. And because of the fact that they don't really have too much value, there's not really a lot of team that is going to be worthy to take that contract. So it seems like the loan out is the option. I mean, right now Atlanta has just so many U22 initiative players that is loan out. All these players that are loan out are just players that just never develop and able to sell off to Europe for a big amount of money. And it seems like, as I said, Franco Barra is definitely the latest one to join that list. Now, Montreal, as I mentioned, they've already made an ambitious move this week. They're looking to make another move as they report to offer 2.5 million euros to sign Ghanaian winger Emmanuel Yeboah from CFT Cluj. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a Romanian club, so you know me in terms of Romanian team or any names in the Baltic states. I would always have trouble in terms of pronouncing it, but nevertheless, this is kind of an interesting one as well, and that again, they already have Mahala Opoku, who's more of a. I mean, you could say that he's kind of more of a 10 and can also play in the winger role too, and they already have Romel Kyoto, though they sometimes shift him to that number 9 spot, though Mason Toy has just returned, so I think Romel Kyoto might be in that spot too, though Kyoto is currently injured. So I think that's why they decided to go for another winger. And I don't know a lot about this guy. We'll see if they do get this signing done, whether he can make some impact with this Montreal team. Now, Wayne Rooney says that DC is going to let Lewis O'Brien loan expire and that he's expected to leave the club around July 15th, as that's the date when his loan expire. And there's a lot of English club that is actually interested in getting Lewis O'Brien. Now, obviously, this has been a thing that I've mentioned, with the way that Lewis O'Brien loan is going to be expiring soon. I wonder whether or not DC is going to look into trying to extend it, and it seems like they're not going to do so, which is a shame because I thought Lewis O'Brien has done well doing his limited time with this DC team, but apparently Wayne Rooney says that they've already thinking about a possible replacement for him, and we'll see whether they can do so, knowing that they're not going to extend Lewis O'Brien loan. Now, Inter Miami, because of course this is not a news of the week episode without talking about Inter Miami and them linking with another player. I mean, they're back in terms of where they were during the expansion season, where they basically been linked with everybody. Though this is now probably for good reason because it's been, ever since they got Messi, they basically have been linked with all his former teammate, and Jordi Alba is the latest name that is looking like he's potentially going to be signing with Inter Miami. I mean, at this point, you could actually call Inter Miami Barcelona, and nobody would actually take it as an insult. Well, maybe some will say maybe as a joke that is, because right now Inter Miami is trying to become like Barcelona back in 2016 or 2015, signing all of these former Barcelona players that used to play for Messi. And again, it's going to be interesting to see how many, of course, is going to be, because obviously they've already got Busquets on this list. They're potentially, as I mentioned, signing Alba, and also Andre Iniesta, who I thought he's already retired. I mean, I think he probably maybe thinking about coming out of retirement and play for Inter Miami. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this team is going to look when Messi does come along, because I have a feeling that whichever team that Inter Miami feel right now is going to be completely different as we get to the era when Messi started to play for this team. Now, the LA Galaxy is actually interested in signing Rodolfo Pizarro, as he is expected to leave Inter Miami, and he's actually one that has really been criticizing in terms of MLS salary cap rule, and especially with Inter Miami decide to use him as kind of the sacrifice in terms of getting Messi to come to MLS on that DP contract. Now, obviously, it sucks because and I do understand and the frustration with Rodolfo Pizarro, because of how MLS have some of the weirdest rules that even I, as a person that have watched MLS and covered MLS for the past couple of years, some rules I still couldn't really quite understand in fully. But that being said, I mean, how when you have a guy that hasn't really been performing at all and has been considered to be one of the biggest flop signings that Inter Miami has made, it's not a big surprise they decided to cut ties with him. And again, the Galaxy, in terms of interest in getting him, I mean, I don't know if that kind of makes sense, because you already have guys like Ricky Puig and Gaston Bookman in that midfield, and the midfield is pretty strong with this Galaxy team. So it doesn't make sense if they decide to get Rodolfo Pizarro, especially if it's going to be on a DP contract. Like, it is pretty clear what kind of spot that this team needs to spend on DP signings. It's definitely not that the midfield. So I don't think this is probably going to happen. But it's kind of interesting to see that I've had heard a rumor that the Galaxy might be that team that is interested to sign him, and I won't be surprised there's going to be other MLS team that is looking to trying to get Rodolfo Pizarro too. Now, finally, moving on into the last news, we got Santiago Moreno. He actually submitted a transfer request after reports that he is actually in disagreement with Giovanni Savarese. Now, obviously, for the Portland Timbers, it's been a disarray this season. I mean, there seems like there's a lot of disagreement that's going on, and even some have said that Gio Savarese might have actually lost the dressing room too, because of the way that there are certain players have said that they don't really want to play under him and doesn't like the tactical style that he plays. And this also kind of gets interesting to the point where whether or not if the Timbers are going to likely to fire Giovanni Savarese, because the Timbers this season, when you look at how they've been playing the last couple of games, I mean, this is just it's been bad. Like it's been bad at a point where I know this team eventually would turn up in the second half of the season, but when you look at how they've been playing, there's really not a lot of signs that tells that they can really turn it up for the second half of the season. So yeah, I mean this is just another latest of what has just been a chaotic season, and really I think this Timbers team has been just in a disarray ever since the whole scandal that was going on last season, and they still just have not recovered from that. And Santiago Marino, although he hasn't been playing very well this season. I mean, really nobody has been playing well for this Timbers team. There's been a lot of underachieving player on this team. I won't be surprised if the Timbers would fall through on this, because again, it's not a good look when you have a player that is clearly unhappy, or even multiple player that is clearly unhappy with a team, and not to mention when you're playing some very boring style of soccer as the Timbers have been playing the last couple of games, and a team that are just sinking down the Western Conference standing because of this long winless run that they've been going through in these past couple of games, and really this past month or two too. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of looking at all the news that has happened. Again, most of these news are signings, as there's a lot of signings that's happened, and I won't be surprised that will continue as we get into the secondary transfer window. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these news? And as always, if there's any news I didn't mention here on the board, let me know in the comments below as always. But until then, hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe video, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.